Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bowtie Movie Lounge. I'm your host, Jacob Strupek. Today we're going into the danger zone with Top Gun. So please, sit back and relax. You got the Bowtie Movie Lounge. Top Gun. We're doing a classic here, and I'm flying solo on this one. So, sit back, hold tight. We're going to see if I can do this. Not as skilled as, I guess, Maverick, as you could say. So yeah, I mean, like I said, a classic movie. What I would think about this movie in whole is it's a good movie. It's a great movie. Um, it's just I wouldn't say it's like an amazing and like a masterpiece because it's more of like just a classic movie that everyone just can't help but to not love. But no, that's it in a nutshell. So I'm gonna start with some numbers here. $15 million budget, making $8 million the opening weekend, which could have is pretty different to today's standards, and making $357 million worldwide to date. So the film stars Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer, Tom Skerritt, Anthony Edwards, and Kelly McGillis. And the film was released in 1986, directed by Tony Scott, a favorite of mine. A really big fan of True Romance and just a lot of others. So we'll definitely be doing some more Tony Scott films coming up. So I mean, the synopsis is pretty basic. Just you have Top Gun Naval Academy, and you got Pete Mitchell, aka Maverick, played by Tom Cruise. Great pilot, lets his attitude get in the way of things when it comes to competing for the Top Gun award, balancing a romance and grieving a death of his co-pilot and best friend Goose, played by Anthony Edwards. Brought to a low enough time where he's contemplating quitting. Pete keeps up and eventually loses the Top Gun award to his rival Iceman, played by Val Kilmer. And then a U.S. naval carrier is threatened by multiple enemy aircraft, whereas Maverick is recruited and shows his remarkable skills as a pilot in combat. Pretty basic movie. I love when you can take a film like this, have a pretty basic and I guess plot, and it's executed very well. Whereas you have these amazing shots of the F-14s just flying everywhere. And then really pushing the boundaries of filmmaking, especially with aerial shots of these planes, and then using models, which we'll get into later, which is a pretty funny story. But no, it's a remarkable piece of film, and I baffled every time I watch it, even though it's from '86, it still holds up. Recently released was its sequel, Top Gun Maverick, which I will definitely be covering later on in the near future with someone. Hopefully I will have a wingman on that with a co-host. So we will definitely see, so stay tuned for that. But no, I mean, just the opening credits, you flip through the channels, or you walk in on someone watching some movie you don't know, and then the opening credits you can automatically tell, and then you have like the score in the background, and they have like the title card of back in 1969 the Naval Academy issued like a top tier training known as Top Gun by its competitors, and you're brought to like a real calm, real serene, kind of orange lit scene on a helicarrier where they're prepping for takeoff on these jets, and then the best needle drop ever of Danger Zone is dropped, and from that on you're in for a ride on just like you're gonna be taken on a sweet treat. Mixed those two words up. That was weird. But no, I mean, just it's an iconic start to the movie where they even spoilers, they brought back for the second one, which caused a lot of just a lot of nostalgia, and this movie set that up, which was amazing. It sticks with us. But then you're brought to and being introduced to the characters, which are all introduced by their call signs. You got Maverick and Goose; they're flying. Um, but then you have also you have Merlin and Cougar, and they're both flying there. I think it's Cougar. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So they're flying together, and you're also not sure who the protagonist is based off of this scene because they both seem very equal. You almost seem like Cougar and Merlin are both they're both gonna be the protagonist. And so then that's where you have a whole lot of introduction. Whereas you don't realize that you can just throw away the Cougar and the Merlin characters. Merlin comes back later on, but you really have Maverick and Goose, and you're kind of shown like their sides where Maverick doesn't want to leave anybody behind. He's gonna go out of orders ways, and out of the way of orders. Better way to say that. In order to bring back his friend and his wingmen out, other than him, back to safety. And it's great character introduction is how I look at it. It's perfect. But yeah, then it's already like gut wrenching in that first scene where Cougar gets he starts flipping out a little bit, starts kind of losing it up in the air because of the MiGs that they had close encounters to where he was almost shot down practically, and just you kind of are quickly introduced to like the real threat of the movie, other than kind of like the race in the middle, which was really well done. But no, just a great opening. I already mentioned like the just adrenaline rush of opening scenes on the helicarrier with Danger Zone. I mean, just a fantastic opening, I think. Why is my mouse not working? But no, just you feel the 80s in this movie. I love that with this. It's almost it's a timeless movie, but it carries the time with it too, like the charm of it, which is I love movies that are like that, where they're simultaneously timeless and kind of dated, but the dated part of it is a charm and like really adds like a good seasoning to it, and I just love it. But yeah, no, just then you're introduced to the cockiness of Maverick and how Goose just kind of plays along with him. And, that's just already a great setup for a character that everyone loves. You just can't go wrong with it. You just can't go wrong with a protagonist that is like going to be a fun ride to be with. He's like, his name is Maverick. He's going to be reckless. And, he's going to be fun to ride along. And, then Goose is like an amazing, like, secondary character. Like his buddy who's, just almost like encouraging the recklessness. My favorite part, not my favorite part, but a really good part is where, you really see how this is going to be a trouble for him in the movie where they're taken to, what's his name? To their commander, Stinger, played by James Tolkan, who I didn't realize was actually like the principal in Back to the Future, which is pretty crazy. I knew it was familiar, but I just could not picture who it was until I had to look him up. I was like, that's right. But yeah, so then you realize this is gonna be kind of like a challenge or struggle, if you will, for him, and it's gonna bite him back. You can just already see it from the get-go that this is gonna be a challenge. But then that's where basically the setup for the whole movie is, where Cougar by then has left. And so he was going to be up for Top Gun. And then you'll learn that Maverick and Goose are now going to Top Gun. Just said that Merlin had to lose for that one. He was going to be going to Top Gun, but by then not anymore. So now, they're going to Top Gun, which is like for the best of the best. Could be the best pilots ever in the world at least if they win too, especially. but still an amazing honor and a privilege. So, it's a good setup for them. But once they get there, already, their cockiness is already playing a game in the whole scheme of things with Iceman 2, who you can tell is pretty arrogant, really brilliantly portrayed by Val Kilmer. Just, he's phenomenal in this and really carries the movie in most of the scenes. He's notorious for doing that. I guess not entirely notorious, but I guess that's a quote for him, more like notorious, which is a direct quote from him, which, he just always has good lines and like the banter between Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer and, with their characters. And, especially Goose and then Slider, who is Iceman's, Rio, is, it's impeccable. The banter between them. But yeah, no, it's the dynamic between all four of them is incredible, especially Maverick and Iceman. Iceman became a very popular character, which Val Kilmer, by the way, hated. Or he just, when he wrapped the movie, or before going in, he just wasn't, really excited about being in it, which is weird because it's become one of his most iconic roles that he's ever played. That was just perfect and like just a role made for him. But yeah, no, I'm so glad he did not pass that one up. But he did phenomenal. But just we'll talk about more of that in a further category. But following the story a bit, you're basically shown through their whole Top Gun and what their lives in Top Gun are going to be like. You're quickly introduced to Charlie, who is the civilian intel. She's like some sort of civilian intel. But she's the love interest. And so you basically get a little bit of everything from this, where, it's an action. It has a little love story. You can't have a Tom Cruise action movie, even though this is one of his first, but you can't have any of those. You can't have a Tom Cruise action story without a love interest in it. And, really well done by Kelly McGillis in this, playing Charlie, who is the resources, civilian resources and intel, but she, portrays it perfectly as well. But, you already have that set up, and she, with the flirting, and like, there's so many, that's an iconic scene where that, like, you've lost that love and feeling. It's just an iconic bar scene, and where he goes and chases her into the bathroom and all, it's phenomenal. And then, he doesn't realize who she is, and he goes back to only find out that she's, basically his informer, and which is, awesome. I love the twist. But no, it's awesome. And then I quickly realized that Maverick becomes like a danger to everyone because of his attitude. And Iceman is definitely like butting heads with him, but Maverick is just, he's so arrogant and cocky, and you just it causes a problem for everybody, including Maverick. So Maverick is seen as like a threat, and to all of his co-pilots, well, not his co-pilots, I guess, his peers flying with him, and he's just really going after shooting down his teachers, Viper and let's see, yeah, Viper, and then Michael Ironside's character, Jester, who I really like seeing him. He kind of pops up in random things, but yeah, no. So the story is very basic and very just like repetitive, I guess. Right in the middle, it's just more of like a roller coaster where you're like, okay, what's going to happen next? It's kind of the same thing, but it's just gonna be a little different here and there. Where Iceman, Maverick, they're constantly butting heads, and that's it basically. until there's a dogfight, a simulated dogfight, where Iceman basically has it, and then has a Viper, or yes, yeah, it was Viper, and then he's about to get him, but then he pulls out to let Maverick get it, and then Maverick and Goose get caught up in their crosswinds, and sends them to a flat spin, and then into the ocean, into the Pacific, and causing Goose to die. The scene is pretty traumatic, especially after you are introduced to Goose's family, like his wife, and then his little son, who later becomes Rooster, which plays a pretty key part in the next film. Spoilers, but this whole tragedy causes a pretty big part. But it causes something for Maverick to have to live up to, and reintroduces the threat that this flying that they're doing is dangerous. Even though it's all like not against enemies, but even though they're flying with themselves, it's like super dangerous. And it seems like Maverick kind of forgets that, and that's what they keep talking about, where his arrogance is basically the enemy, and it's his own worst enemy, which just I guess can be applied to us in everyday life. I guess is like a takeaway from it, but no, I love how they reintroduced that element of danger back into it with, sadly, the death of Goose, who is someone that you least wanted to die, especially the way he did in this, and got some really tear-jerking moments, especially with his wife, played by Meg Ryan. She does great in this. I love her in everything she does, but she really does great in this. She really pulls up, and like minor character just kind of upstages everybody. Especially where she says he loved flying with you, Maverick, but he would have done it even without you. He would have hated it, but he still would have done it. Just really destroys it, and like just her crying, and then just really brings the effect of Goose's passing, and then really elevates the impact of Maverick's emotions even more, and this fact that he's about to quit, especially after like he just started this relationship with Kelly McGillis's character Charlie, and it just really elevates things and brings the stakes even higher. And it just, I don't know, it just adds a crazy element. I keep saying that. But he's about to quit, and then he's dealing with his own things, and it's kind of like the low part for our protagonist, to where he has to come back up, of course, is, the basic movie trope. But, and then he just, he comes back, of course, and things are really shaky, and then he basically is about to quit. So that's when he goes to talk to his teacher, Viper, and that's where he kind of talks to him, tells him certain things about his dad, who actually died in a test flight, and just he flew with him back, I think, during Pearl Harbor, I think it was, and it's just a lot. You're kind of taught about Maverick's character, why he's trying to live up to be his, basically his dad, or not be his dad who passed away, but still be the same and carry on the name. And just kind of learn a little bit more about his character. And then, Charlie, of course, comes back and tells him, just he can move on, but, it's just going to not turn out well for him. But yeah, no. Let's see. But yeah, then of course, he's off to, he of course comes back to graduate with everyone, but he wins second in the whole Top Gun, and of course, he's beat by Iceman, which is pretty interesting that they didn't have him like win completely, whereas but then again, still works out for him. He's actually brought to a special mission that they have for him, where uh, a helicarrier back in the Indian Ocean, I believe, is it's not doing too well, and so they're having to go back and save it, and it's just basically under attack by quite a few MiGs, which was the first element of distress in the first scene, which were the stakes were. And so, you're brought to there, and I really like how, you're reintroduced. It's you could tell where the beginning was basically a foreshadow to this scene, and you get to see like the real action, like where the real stakes, because the whole time you really weren't seeing any until Goose died, until that accident. But now you're back in with known enemies, and you're brought back with a familiar face, which was Merlin, who was actually played by Tim Robbins, which was pretty cool. So you got like Tom Cruise's Maverick flying with Andy Dufresne, which is a trip, as his co-pilot. I guess he got out of Shawshank, and before he went to Mexico, that's what he did. That's what he was doing. He decided to become a pilot before a fisherman. But yeah, no, like that's basically the whole movie, where he's just, and like the whole story is, like I said before, it's basic, but then it's just a roller coaster ride where you're there enjoying what you're seeing, and you're feeling everything, and it's just an adrenaline rush, but it's very basic. That's why, like, I loved it as a kid, but I was also at the same time even noticed, like, it's a pretty basic movie. But even the tidbits, which we will get into, tidbits when the production are pretty fun. So yeah, so to wrap up like the story part of it, he gets out, he pretty much saves everyone with all these amazing maneuvers and stuff, and saves Iceman at one point. Just kind of proves that he still has it, and he's still probably the best flyer, even though he didn't win first in Top Gun. And he gets out, of course, and there's like the picture that plays a big part in the second one with Iceman, where he tells him, "You can be my wingman anytime." So it's just, it leaves on a good note. So he probably gets the girl in the end, of course, which was hard. Which I really liked the love duo, the dynamic between Tom Cruise and Kelly McGillis. They had great chemistry, I thought. I really liked it. She brought a lot of character to it, not just being the damsel in distress, basically. She was doing her job in the film, and I really liked it. Just real quick and real witty. Just basically like Maverick, just not as like daring, but more, real witty with her maneuvers. And I really like that. But let's get into some tidbits, shall we? So the actual Top Gun Academy fines $5 to any staff that quote this movie. That's got to be hard to do. You can't go in there, I guess, saying permission to buzz the tower, to do a flyby, and then a negative Ghost Rider. That's got to be hard for people to say. And then, of course, you have to pay $5 to anybody, which is crazy. That's had to come to that. Makes sense. But then stunt pilot Art Scholl died during the production. His plane went to the Pacific after he couldn't recover from a flat spin. This film is dedicated to him after the tragedy. You can find that in the end credits. But yeah, even his plane or his body wasn't recovered from the Pacific, which is pretty tragic. Probably it's hard to tell, which part they may have been filming. I don't know. It could have been the scene with Goose, not sure, but still very tragic, and that was hard to deal with and overcome, and sad to bring to his family. Anthony Edwards, Goose's actor that played Goose, was the only actor not to vomit while in the jets. It sounds like, reading and researching on this, it sounds like that was a pretty common thing. You don't think about that when you're watching. It's like, wow, like everything going on, like, some people, that happens on like roller coasters and stuff, and this is definitely like 10 times worse than that. But yeah, no, it's crazy. So he was the only one not to, I guess, do vomit, to put it harshly. The Navy set up recruiting booths outside the theaters during the showing of this film to catch the adrenaline-filled viewers. Enlistment went up 500%. That is insane and makes total sense. I never saw any of that for the sequel, which I feel like they maybe should have done and would have done the same thing. I don't know. Maybe they just did it and I not where I am. That's pretty crazy. That literally went up 500%, and makes a total sense because like even watching this, it's just basically a whole recruitment ad done in a movie, which the Navy definitely had like a lot of say in the film, which is crazy. But that's basically all this movie was just a recruitment ad. But Tom Cruise agreed to do the movie when he was taken for a ride and just came back completely winded, full of adrenaline, and was just like, never mind, I'd like to do this movie. Because at first he was a little hesitant, is what I've read. The Navy authorized only 2 missile launches, but when the movie came out, they launched an investigation for unauthorized missile launches due to the models being phenomenally good. That's pretty awesome. You can kind of tell, like, which ones were real, but then there are like some where like they did really well, and so like the fact that it came to that, it shows that like how like great this does, and like the production was just amazing for this, and like the set pieces with the models, like it didn't it this was like past Star Wars, which was good, and so they were really good with it. And it's just insane that they got the Navy to launch an investigation. That's just insane. But there was actual tension between Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer on set. Val Kilmer is just, like I said before, notorious for just having tension with everybody, which, you can hear about that a lot. There's even like a movie that's pretty notorious for that, Island of Dr. Moreau, I think is what it was, where it's just, that's a whole drama-filled behind the scenes thing especially with Val Kilmer mainly. He's just a guy that's like that. But I think he and Tom Cruise kind of got over it, especially over the years. But there are actually a lot of real life Top Gun instructors in the background. Many of the instructors I read went on to be astronauts, which is pretty interesting. Very interesting pattern. But yeah, you can notice like a lot of them in the background, like the old date that Charlie goes on. That Maverick is like, I'm gonna save you from him. Like that's a real Top Gun instructor. And a lot of them just happen to be in the background, which is pretty funny. Tom Cruise. Now this one's interesting. Tom Cruise has never ridden a motorcycle before this film. He was taught in the parking lot of House of Motorcycles in California. It's funny because he goes on to ride a motorcycle in literally every single movie he's in now. I mean, you can't watch a Tom Cruise movie and he's not riding a motorcycle. That's just insane. That this was his first film. Like, this was the film that taught him how to ride a motorcycle. That's just crazy to me. But the Navy, like I said before, had a lot to say. So, since it was almost like since it was basically a recruiting tool, this movie was. But of course, like most movies, literally like in this one, literally every famous actor in the 80s. So you have like Michael J. Fox. I'm pretty sure it was Robert Downey Jr. even. They all were up for the role of Maverick. But Jerry Bruckheimer, the producer, wanted Tom Cruise after seeing Risky Business, which was the movie that kind of brought him into the spotlight. But this one definitely kicked off Tom Cruise's career as an action star, which we'll definitely get into in our category for notable cool acting performances. Demi Moore was almost Charlie. Oh no, I like Kelly McGillis. And then the next one, of course, has Jennifer Connelly, who I think kind of looks like Demi Moore, which is pretty interesting. Um, but yeah, no, that's it for the tidbits on production that I have. Ones that I found interesting. I do remember one where Meg Ryan had actually suggested Anthony Edwards because they were good friends, and she actually suggested Anthony Edwards to play the role of Goose. Said that everyone would love him, and she was right, 100%. I mean, that was something that I remember reading. I was like, I probably won't put it down, but definitely stuck with me. Something I just find funny and very coincidental because Goose was a character that was just brilliantly portrayed and was really effective, especially in his accident scene, and really carried with us. But yeah, no. So that's it for, I guess, the story and for the tidbits on the production. So now I've got some categories. So I'm going to start off with the personal pros, like hit picks. What I came is it's just hard to pull off a production that just consists of planes flying, basically. Uh, but the dialogue going over the shots were really what carried it. Kind of like when you go back to the last scene in A New Hope, the Star Wars A New Hope. It's just basically all the dialogue going on over. You can't really see their faces very well, especially in this one where they have their mask and stuff. But no, it's just think about a movie just about planes flying all over the place. It's hard to pull something like that off, and kudos to them for actually being able to do that. But personal cons or nitpicks, I couldn't really come up with any. I came up with one right before I started doing it, and I forgot what it was now. I should have written it down. But for this movie, basically, let's see, I'm pretty sure we did it for Happy Gilmore on our last one. But I mainly did it for this one, which is a new category, was cultural impact. And this film definitely introduces a lot. So I put down Aviators. Set piece right here. This one really kicked off the sales for those. Really made them popular. If they weren't before, they were definitely popular before, but this one made them super cool, especially to the younger audience, and really brought them up. Now I guess they're not as much of an older man's glasses. I guess really kicked them off though. There's because of this movie, they're still around today. And we'll see what it looks like after the next movie. But they're, especially after this movie, 40 years later, they're still popular just because of this. But the music just, it kind of especially with Danger Zone, it just kind of changed the way action movies kind of have it. And then this one just, I guess, executed it really well. There's a lot of movies out there where they kind of have the same feel. They still try to do the same thing, but this one just executed it perfectly. But another one I wrote down was volleyball with jeans, and being shirtless. I guess is something that people do a little bit more nowadays, just because it was very odd in this movie. A lot of people would see that as a nitpick. I just thought it was iconic and kind of hilarious. Just why would you play volleyball in jeans? And then shirtless with everyone just flexing. So that had a big impact on how people play volleyball nowadays, and that's growing up where I am, I definitely see it, which is real funny. I definitely see that a lot. Next category, notable acting performances. Like I was saying earlier, this is the film that Tom Cruise introduces himself as an action star. It's kind of interesting where this is it. This is the birth of action Tom Cruise. This is the birth of Tom Cruise. He goes on to do quite a few more dramas, but this is where without this, he probably wouldn't have been doing all, what are we on now, 8 Mission Impossible, War of the Worlds, and Oblivion, and Edge of Tomorrow. Without this movie, I don't think there would be many of those. He'd probably be in some of them, but this is like where it's really shown where he can do all this, and like he could do some of the stunts in the planes too, like taking all the G forces, such like that. So this is a really crucial film to Tom Cruise's career, which is interesting. I wonder what it would have been like for some of these other actors who are in the run for other ones. Robert Downey Jr. has been fine, with being in probably the biggest action, I guess, film criterion ever, with the Avengers, with him as Iron Man. He was fine, obviously, but for any others, like, there were just a bunch of different ones, like, I wonder where they would have been like. But Tom Cruise really found, like, I guess, a stuntman in him with this, which is insane. But not the other acting performances. Val Kilmer, like I said, just did perfectly as Iceman, as being like a protagonist, and just really carried the role perfectly, especially with that like real life behind the scenes drama between him and Cruise, and a little tension there. But then Kelly McGillis, I haven't really seen her in a whole lot other than like Witness. But she really isn't in a whole lot. I looked up her IMDb, and there wasn't really a lot of familiar things. And this was it. But she did perfectly. Like I was, mentioning earlier, where she played the part of the witty love interest and always had the comebacks, and was just perfect for being the love interest. And she was phenomenal, I believe. But then you have Anthony Edwards, who wasn't really in a whole lot either. He goes on to be in a few things, really not a whole lot. But, he was in, ER, Revenge of the Nerds, and later Zodiac, which are the only ones that I really know of. But he played the secondary character role really well, and I really loved, the way he portrayed. And Tom Skerritt just has that real gritty, almost always has been like an old man, just full of wisdom type thing, just real gritty, and he definitely lives out in the mountains type thing, almost like I guess not really a knockoff, but Sam Elliott kind of feel. I guess it's the mustache and just the way he talks, but no, it does great as that. And then Michael Ironside, just everyone in this does really well. Has like they carry the 80s dialogue very well, and handled the writing amazingly, and I guess they had also great direction by Tony Scott. But no, everyone did great. Some favorite quotes. I was trying to write down, it's a lot of more back and forth banter, not really many one-liners type things. I mean, you have the obvious, like, like Tower requesting a flyby, negative Ghost Rider pattern is full. Everyone just kind of dices up and just, everyone says negative Ghost Rider to a lot of things. But then, there's definitely like, I love the ones where like, whose butt did you kiss to get in here, which said by Slider, and then Goose has the list is long but distinguished. There are a lot of real quick, witty comebacks in this. There's almost too many to count. And, just a lot of little basic things, but most of it's the banter between each other, and it's just great. So it's a pretty long one, and, just Maverick, just all of his little things he says to Charlie, like, first time I did it, crashed and burned, and Charlie's like, the second, he's like, I don't know, it's looking good so far, I'll let you know tomorrow. Just like, just real quick and witty. That's just like his character, and it's just perfect. The writing is great. A little cheesy in some places, but other than that, it's phenomenal. The cinematography, really well done. I mean, working with the jets, like, that's just insane. Had to be hard to film, especially with like real film, and they really nailed it, and they really pulled it off, which is, working in film. You see how many takes they do over and over, and like it had to be very time consuming to do this, especially with a lot of the aerial footage, and it just whatever they got worked. I don't know how they did it, but it was amazing. Then the score and soundtrack, just the classic '80s soundtrack. The scores '80s just captures the era really well, and just it's phenomenal. Um, you just can't go wrong with it. I mean, especially Danger Zone, and then like the soundtrack has Sitting on the Dock by the Bay, just a bunch of different classics, and just it's perfect. And I know like the whole album didn't release till years later. Like this was made in 1986. The album didn't come out like somewhere in the 90s, like 92, maybe 96. It took forever for it to come out, but I'm sure everyone was waiting for it. But now these days we can just pull it up. But yeah, no, I mean that's it for the categories. Let's see, story rewrites or inserts, none. Uh, let's see, recasting. I didn't write any of that. I just didn't include it, but I didn't put a lot of thought into it. But no, that's all I have for the categories. Should have done more with recasting. That would have been fun to do. Maybe next time. I probably will redo this film with someone in the future. Maybe distant future. We'll see. I just wanted to push one out. And then I thought Top Gun was perfect, especially with Top Gun Maverick being out, which I couldn't highly recommend enough. It's just an amazing film. Perfect sequel. I had I wouldn't say low expectations for it, but definitely like, I guess, lukewarm or kind of mid expectations for it. And it just, even if I had high ones, it would have surpassed them. It's just, everything is better than this movie, I believe, actually. So, especially if you haven't seen it, I highly encourage you to watch the second one. Top Gun Maverick, as of right now, it's still in theaters. Definitely worth the $10 or whatever. I would say pay 15, or even for like the even better like quality, because it's perfect. This story, it's definitely more triggers a lot more nostalgia if you have a connection to this movie, kind of like more like I did, and an older audience. I guess you can classify what you will with that, an older audience, but people who just grew up with this movie, this first one, and it just triggers a lot of nostalgia. Kind of clears up who some of the people are, such as the character Rooster in it, being Goose's son in this, and the tragedy that happened and how it affects that character. And I would definitely consider making sure you're brushed up on this, and go back and then go forward more like and watch the sequel. But that's a request of mine. As of right now, Elvis is out in the theaters. Probably gonna go watch that tonight. I'm kind of the same I had with Top Gun Maverick, just kind of lukewarm expectations. Just kidding, I'm gonna go watch it. I'm not sure what to expect, but I'm really hoping. I've heard too many good things about it, so we will see. And then a lot of good movies coming out. I'm recording this in July of 2022, and things are looking good. Got Thor: Love and Thunder coming out soon, which I am very excited. Big Taika Waititi fan. Gonna have to do maybe Jojo Rabbit or Hunt for the Wilder People eventually. If you haven't seen either of those two, definitely should check those out. So yeah, I'm excited for this coming month and films being released. So anyway, thank you all for joining me today. If you've sat all the way through listening to my take on Top Gun from 1986, not the new one, I really kudos to you for listening to me talk by myself, hoping to have someone else on the next one. Not sure where the next film may be. Hoping to do Interview with the Vampire soon. But yeah, check out our Instagram or Twitter, or shoot us an email at mailbag@bowtiemovielounge.com. We definitely hope to catch you soon. Adios.